Hi, I'm here with Chad Norris, the author of a new book, Signs, Wonders, and a Baptist Preacher, being featured in the Pathos Book Club this latter part of March. Chad, hi. Chad's joining us from Greenville, South Carolina. Good morning.
Hey Deb, thanks for having me on this morning.
So your book, Signs, Wonders, and a Baptist Preacher, pretty remarkable book.
Well, it's funny. I think I've gotten more laughs off the title than I have a bunch of these serious looks. It's words that you typically don't hear, signs, wonders, and the Baptist, and so we decided to go with that title, and this produced a lot of laughs actually.
Well, tell me about the impetus for this book. This book is ultimately about your journey towards understanding that we're called to be healers in the world. And when we're talking about healers, I'm talking about serious healings. I mean, you are experiencing the kinds of healings in your own life and ministry that Jesus did in his time and in his ministry.
Yeah, simply put, the book is the story of my life. And the majority of the story of my life is clinical depression and panic attacks and agoraphobia and medications such as Zoloft and Xanax. And so my world, most of my story is nothing but brokenness. And I wish I could tell you that through my genius intellect that I found some things in the scriptures and started digging in. That's really not what happened to me. I had an encounter with the Lord, and he really shifted my paradigm on what he's like. He's the nicest person I've ever met in my life. And I think the reason that I'm seeing so many people helped by him is not because of great faith, but actually great brokenness.
Hmm. So you had an experience, you had a vision that really got you started. I can't remember, is that what you called the burrito moment, or was that a different?
Well, you know what's funny is, like, even when you say vision, I'm still sort of laughing because I really don't even know what to call it.
Hmm.
I was in a therapy session with my wife in Titusville, Florida, and it's the middle of the day, 3 p.m. I'm just a Baptist guy. We don't talk about things like this. And then all of a sudden, I'm somewhere else. I don't know what you call it. I have no idea. He walks up to me, more real than me looking to you on this interview right now. And
He being Jesus or God?
yeah, 5'11", 185 pounds. And listen, when I say that, I guarantee you people are like, whatever, who is this idiot? But it happened to me. And so my wife said, what happened? I picked myself up off the floor, and 10 years later, I'm still processing it. And really what it did for me, Deb, is when I had that encounter, I mean, I had a seminary education. I was used to being in the Word and things like that. But I really started changing the way that I thought about everything. And what's funny is when I would get into the Word or just listen to sermons or just think about God after that, I started seeing Him totally different.
Mm-hmm.
My paradigm for God was an aloof, ticked off, mean person. And I could go into why all that was, but the truth was I was wrong.
Hmm.
And that's how it started for me.
Well, how did this new vision or this new understanding of who God and Jesus were, how did that lead you into uh, praying for people so much so that it was an experience of healing for many people?
Well, what happened for me is I was bored to death one day. I was speaking to a couple thousand teenagers in San Angelo, Texas, and I don't know if you've ever been there before. It's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. There is nothing to do in this town, and
Right.
it was so hot. So I went in my hotel room, and I really didn't know why, but I just opened up the Word, and I just started reading Acts. And instead of getting inspired, I got so mad. I read pretty much all day, took my Bible, slammed it against the wall, and I just looked up to heaven, and I was like, my life looks nothing like this.
Hmm.
And I started asking questions, which I tell people all the time: be careful the questions you ask, because I felt like that rabbit in Alice in the Wonderland. I went down into a hole that I didn't realize there was a whole other matrix to this thing. And I just asked God, how come I don't see this stuff? And He said, because you don't believe in it. and
Hmm.
I started hearing Him more. And so really, it wasn't through a bunch of experience. It was, I now started reading the Gospels, and I was like, all you ever did was heal people. I mean, He only did three things while He's here: heal people, cast demons out of people, and He preached the kingdom. You can have a thriving church and not do any one of those three things. And for me, honestly, Deb, I just said, I can't do this anymore. Either this stuff is real or it's not. And then, man, when I started investigating, I never wanted to get into charismatic things, but I started getting into Jesus things, and I could not turn back once I started seeing people healed.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think it was for you and for other people that claim to heal or do heal others? Do you think you see differently, or do you think that just these glasses or these scales have been removed from your eyes, um, and that what is it? What do you think it is?
You know, Deb, for me, and I know what you mean when you say that, but I truly have never healed anyone in my life.
Mm,
I don't have great faith. I don't even think I have the gift of healing, which that brings up an interesting conversation with a lot of scholars, and I've had those conversations. I think for me, if you ask why do I see the things that I see, about 10 years ago, I read one tiny little idea that says, do you not know that you're a temple of God and the Spirit of God lives in you? And I started to develop a mindset of, wait a minute, he's not just off in heaven, he literally lives in me. And if that's true, and I don't have the faith to heal a gnat of a cold, then here's what I'm going to do. When I lay hands on people, I'm going to pray this deep prayer. Here it goes. Jesus, help them. And with the faith of, I'm serious, like a 3-year-old, when I started doing that, I started seeing things, and I thought, man, this thing is nothing like I thought. It's so easy. You have to have someone help you misunderstand how easy this thing is. And so what we did, the Lord just kept telling me, Chad, just lay hands on people and get out of the way.
mm,
And so it makes me really nervous when I read a lot of things on healing that are so complicated, and people just, you ask 10 people who walk in healing ministry, you'll get 10 different answers every time from 10 different interviews. For me, I see more success in healing when I have the faith of a 3-year-old and not a scholar.
mm. Yeah, it makes me think of all the skeptics around healers, and there's so many different types of healers in the world, and people that travel around the world to visit a healer that, later turns out is a complete hoax. And so, you have a lot of skepticism out there, obviously, about healing. It's just not something that in our modern scientific world we think really can happen. But that's exactly what you're trying to say in this book, is that because
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. When the Lord told me to write this book, I said, I'm not doing it. I was on an airplane coming back from Haiti, and I knew what he would want me to write about. And we had been near Quadabaquet, Haiti, and seen some pretty wild things. And my first thought was, I don't want to put my family through this. I mean, I'm not an idiot. I know what people think about all this healing stuff. Listen, I walk in it, and I'm skeptical of it. And so I get the whole conversation it can be very uncomfortable. And I felt like the intent of the book was to add a lot of normalcy to the conversation, which is why I put the chapter on there. What do you do when you pray for someone and they're not healed?
Right.
And I wrote the book through the lens of my brokenness, not through the lens of, hey guys, I have this thing figured out. I've got an airplane and I wear $2,000 suits, and that is just not who I am. And I think the conversation is way more messy than it is neat.
So, what do you do when you pray for someone and they don't get healed?
Well, the first thing, and this is something I've been really chewing on for a couple of years now. A good friend of my family lost their daughter a few years ago. And that week I had seen a couple of dramatic healings, and I went to pray for her, and I just thought, I'm going to walk in. It's going to be this incredible story. And when she went to be with the Lord a couple of days later, it put me into such a bad place. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not doing it anymore because, number one, no one on this earth can answer that question fully. And it just became very difficult for me to process. So here's how I got over it after about a month. I realized that I'm never praying for a person's sickness. I'm always praying for a person. And as a pastor, the moment that healing becomes about the sickness and not about the person, we've already lost. And so when I pray for someone and they're not healed, even before I pray, I want to connect with the person way more than even talk about what they're dealing with. In our church, last week, we had a funeral for an amazing woman named Melissa that I cannot wait to see again. She has 3 beautiful children. I'm going over Sunday night to grill out with her husband, Brad. Melissa went to be with Jesus. She fought cancer for 2 years. She goes to our church. She's in a culture where we see quite an amount of breakthrough. And so to answer your question, this is not something that I'm reading the book about. I'm walking it out right now. And the only thing I know to do when that happens is you walk in grace and dignity and compassion, and you learn how to truly empathize. Because I tell you this, the thing that gets me the maddest about this conversation on healing, when I find someone condemning someone else with, well, it's your fault, you didn't have enough faith, they don't know the Father. They don't know the Father. The Father's not that way at all. And so I think a lot of times in healing ministry, we care more about the healings than we do even the actual person. And honestly, I think the more you learn to love people, you will see people healed on accident. I mean, I'll put my arms around people sometimes and just give them a hug, and they'll say, I felt warmth flow in my shoulder. I didn't even know they had a bad shoulder. And I tell you what's really, really weird. Writing this book, I battled sickness a lot. And so a lot of people think, well, you must never be sick. That's ridiculous. I mean, I remember writing one of my favorite chapters in the book, and I had a double sinus infection. I can barely breathe. So I think just learning to be okay with the mess of it and not go from one ditch to the other. A lot of people don't want to walk in healing because they don't want to walk through Melissa Mean's story. Because it's like, well, I'm going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But there's got to be a new message. There's got to be a new movement of people that say, you know what? I can't fully explain it. It's not about me. Some people get healed, some people don't. When people receive and when they don't, I'm going to show them grace and dignity and compassion.
And it seems like really the message of your book is whatever happens is not ultimately up to you, but it's our job as followers of Jesus to be open and to practice healing, because that's what Jesus did when he was here. He laid hands on people. He expected and invited and asked for healing for people. And so it's not about ultimately the healing, but it's about our job, our response, our becoming more open to this.
You just said it better than I did. Really, the book is simply, if Luke 9:2 says, all right, we're supposed to be doing this stuff now. Jesus sent his disciples out to do it. I've been amazed, Deb, in the past 10 years in America, so much preaching of how God loves to use sickness to teach people things. I've been in shock that there's not someone saying, wait a minute, if we're his disciples, why aren't we doing what he commanded us to do? And so I may not be able to control the outcome of everything, but I tell you what, I do control whether or not I pray for a sick person. And it's if you have $1 million gun with $1 million bullets, but you never pull the trigger, who cares? What's the point of it? I'm just simply trying to get people to pull the trigger, and then they're going to be in shock. I see this every week of my life. People will be like, Chad, you're not going to believe this. I prayed for so-and-so, and I saw this happen.
Right. Yeah. So just do it. In other words, just do it. And that seems to really be the message of your book. And not only just do it, but it's not some really difficult thing. We're just called to pray for healing and go and invite and expect signs and wonders and open your eyes to them. So really quite a remarkable book, and I'm really excited to see what kind of response the book has. I don't know, have you had already? I mean, in your book you talk a lot about you almost apologize a lot for even writing this book and like, listen, I know this sounds crazy, people. Listen, I mean, quite a bit throughout the book you use a lot of humor, I think, to help kind of give the book some levity, because it is such a kind of scary topic for a lot of people. What kind of response have you had so far?
Well, it's funny. The response so far from the people around me, I keep telling people, well, of course you're going to say that because we do life together, Right. But now I'm starting to, because their response has been really good, I'm starting to get a lot of emails from across the country. You know what I think people are going to appreciate about this book? My story is panic attacks and clinical depression. And I'm very vulnerable about that. And I think people are drawn to the brokenness of it. This book is not hey, I have this thing figured out, and here's what you need to do because you're wrong and I'm right. Really, it's a book that is trying to encourage people to engage their own stories and to perhaps be a little more comfortable with the messiness of following Jesus. I think people just need to be encouraged that you don't have to be weird to walk into the supernatural. when I talked to Jane Campbell at Chosen Books when she contacted me about this book, the first thing we decided is let's just take the air out of the balloon on this conversation.
Mm.
And I really connected with her in some conversations, and she just said, "Chad, just be you, just be who you are. If people who read this book could hang out with me or my family, not a superstar, still struggle with insecurities. I think the reason in the book where I keep apologizing, I probably still have some of those orphan tendencies of who am I? I'm not worthy to write this thing. So yeah, that's a lot of the feedback I'm getting is they're appreciating the vulnerability.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on the book, and we're excited to have this book in the Pathos Book Club. You all go check it out. We're going to have bloggers blogging about the book and their own experiences of engaging signs and wonders in the world. Chad, thank you so much. Blessings, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, Deb.
All right. Bye-bye.